Okay, I don't know if you guys have personally seen this, but there is a new season of Euphoria. You know, Big Zendaya, and everybody was kind of all excited to see what was up next. But in particular, there's a scene, and of course, it's taken a little bit out of context, right? When Christians see something, but in that scene, main character is talking to another character, and she essentially says, "Yeah, I stayed with this Christian family on their farm. They had all like it was a large family and things seemed so great." And the other character responds, goes, "Yeah, because they're in a cult." And she goes, "What do you mean?" So sometimes I just feel like my life would be better if I was a Christian. And this is coming from a character who is a drug addict, who has been a drug addict since she's been in high school. Her life is chaotic. And the other character was like, "Well, I wouldn't be friends with you if you were a Christian." She was like, "Why?" And she goes, "Because they're judgmental." And it just kind of left it right there. And I was watching it, and when I saw that, it kind of like rubbed like my bristles were kind of like, that's kind of weird. But it's also interesting on the other hand, like people are focusing on that portion. That particular character is also going through a journey where she kind of feels like she's discovering Christ. And so I'm interested to see where they take that storyline.
Yeah.
I don't have high hopes. I have a feeling they're going to take something with it and like drop it. But curious, I mean, that's not the first time, it won't be the last time that Hollywood likes to take something and portray a narrative, particularly about Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
So let me know your thoughts if you have seen that scene or what you guys, because some people are definitely having discourse about it right now on the internet.
Yeah.
I haven't seen this. Well, I saw the clip, but I'm not big on Euphoria. I've heard of it. I feel like I've seen like a little bit.
It's definitely an edgy show. The premise of season 1 is that it follows a group of high schoolers, and they have a ton of problems of their own, right? They're having sex. Obviously, Rue is a drug addict, and they're barely like 16, 17 years old. They're dabbling into like getting. It was, like that whole thing with Omegle and like meeting people online and like inappropriate types of things. But it highlights some real issues that some teenagers do face, unfortunately. But it also, in my opinion, kind of romanticized it with like the flashing lights and the pretty makeup and type of that scene. But that's just to give you background on what Euphoria.
I think about just the the reputation that we have. So it's like, oh, I wouldn't be your friend because Christians are judgmental, right? I think that's the part that kind of like, it's like, ooh,
right.
It kind of makes you.
It was a cult when she was like, "It's a cult," and I was like,
but I mean, to somebody that's like not in it, maybe it does look like a cult,
right?
If you don't have the spirit, you can't understand spiritual things for sure. So
that's true.
That's why a lot of people find difficulty with that. But the whole judgmental comment too, I think what a lot of the world doesn't understand is that you're not trying to imitate Christians. You're trying to imitate Christ. So I think that's where that kind of gets lost. And if you don't, like we said, have the Holy Spirit, you're not going to understand that.
Yeah, and I feel like Christianity is the only thing that can be openly laughed at, right, or be mocked in the media, because more and more, and it may be because they control all the media, but like Jewish faith in particular is a lot, right? Like Adam Sandler, he does a lot of movies. Mm-hmm. He includes that a lot in a lot of his stuff. That gets talked about, not really as made fun of. There can be Muslims, but I feel like nobody like ever comes, right? And it's like, oh yeah, I go to like this Christian, like the characters, right? Whoever these shows are being written about, unless it's being made for Christian viewers, right? In which case people kind of already poke fun and they're like, "Oh, that's boring, that's lame, like, why would I want to watch a show about that?" And so that part is kind of interesting, right? Like they're having this conversation and saying things like, well, Christians are judgmental, so if they're one of the only people talking about Christianity, they're kind of like, in my opinion, trying to control the narrative.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because you think about media, I think that's what we're looking at today, trying to make it relatable, trying to make it extreme so people will watch it and be engaged with it, right?
Right.
But when you think about TV shows, a couple of decades ago, they wouldn't even show husbands and wives in the same bed together.
Yeah.
It was very family values.
Right? So you think about that and you think about where we're at today. Yes, it's unfortunate how they're talking negatively about Christians and media. However, it wasn't always that way, right? So you want to make sure we're painting that picture, looking at it from that perspective. I wonder what is going on that's changing that narrative now? And is that more of a cultural thing? Is that like a United States, like an Eastern thing, or what's going on?
So, what worldview would you guys say is being preached through? We'll just say specifically TV shows for now, in secular entertainment.
It's like that self-righteous, like everybody's kind of focused on inward work.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a problem too, because it goes against the Bible.
Live your best life.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
be your best self, and just that type of stuff is not. It's not portraying correctly for.
You're the main character in your story.
Yes.
Yep.
You know, because one of
Yeah,
the
but it makes
popular things is still coming of age stories, right?
Mhm.
Like, and I feel like that is like the most vulnerable. So they're so as a teenager, you're watching this. If you're already an adult, it's already too late for you, right? But like, as a teenager, you're watching a come of age, and they're like, "Oh, I'm trying to find things out about myself. Oh, like, does this person like me? Are we gonna have sex tonight? Are we, like, we're trying drinking and high school parties and like all of those. They follow very similar, right?
Mhm.
Coming of age. That's what it is. Is like they're going through these phases of life and trying to normalize those types of things, right? And I
Mhm.
think you mentioned how media used to be, and then when things kind of started. I will say I am an avid Friends watcher. Friends the show. I like Friends. But if I were to take a step back as a Christian, I could see the storylines that were starting to creep in, right? In the 90s, Sex and the City, Friends, like all those sitcoms that made these characters so relatable, but then also they're sneaking in. It's okay to meet people and have sex right away. It's okay if you are, bounce from relationship to relationship. It's okay if you just put yourself out there, right? And it's kind of interesting.
I would expect it to be that way. Is that bad to say? Like,
Right.
that we are gonna, society, humanity is gonna degrade further and further from the truth
Right.
and from the Bible, right? Like it's written that that'll happen. Like the further and further we get AD, right, the worse it's gonna get. And so I think we see it in the media, like you said. It would be cut to a blank screen, right? Leave something up to your imagination. Where now, it's not imagination; it's soft porn, or maybe some movies is straight up porn.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, depending on
I
what
think
you're
it's
watching.
less left up to the imagination.
Yeah.
Like they used to just cut from the screen when
Right.
something was going to happen, and now it's like you got to watch it to be
Yeah.
like, oh, they, that's what's going on.
You know, those old cartoons were only like the moms were always like hips down.
Mhm.
That's all
Yeah.
you would see. You wouldn't see anything like up here. They definitely got rid of all of that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Betty Boop was probably like like how she was drawn, and
Boop.
then like, well, I was trying to think of,
I'm hoping.
right. But even back then, right? Like it's like things slowly start to like
Mhm.
spiral and get sexualized. And so, anyways, back to the original question. Like I definitely think you're correct in saying that it's a lot of no matter what it is. Maybe it's not self-righteous. Maybe it's self-righteous. Maybe it's self-fulfilling.
Mhm.
Maybe it's this. Maybe it's that.
So
It's all about self. And whatever your story is, it's okay. You're entitled to be that way, and everything will work out in the end, right? Like those are the plot. Like you follow these crazy characters, and it's chaotic, and then in the end, it's justified.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, why is that though? Why is it all about self? It's all about. I think it's because that's what people want to see, right?
Mhm.
I think it's about money, honestly.
They want to feel better
Okay.
about themselves.
Right? I think it's really just about what's going to be like, oh my gosh, they said that. Oh my gosh, they showed that. Oh my,
Mhm.
I want to see that. People are talking about it. We're talking about it, right?
I want to know that people think that what I'm doing is also okay. Like, if it's portrayed in
Justification.
media, right?
They definitely did that on Euphoria. And what you said earlier was correct too about how they romanticize it. Like in high school, your brain is still growing. I think a lot of high schoolers, we might think we were growing at that time, but we weren't. And you're seeing that constantly, like you said, the bright colors, and then
Yeah.
it looks, oh, that looks so fun, even though you see in these shows that it's not going well for them.
Right.
They're falling apart. They're depressed.
Right.
They're crying. They're having a lot of issues. And then high schoolers look at that and they're like, "That looks fun."
And I don't think Euphoria was, to be fair, right? I don't think it was created for the intent
think
of
so
high
either.
schoolers. But you also know that there's almost zero like media control, especially by the time like somebody reaches teenage years,
Yeah.
right? Like there's not a lot of parents that are like saying you can't watch that or you can't do this. And I even remember in my own households, like with my mom, it was like, oh, like I would see it and be like, okay, yeah, I feel uncomfortable. Like my mom and stepdad would be watching a movie and be like, oh, okay, yeah, like I'm gonna go. But then at a certain point, like you would just be watching TV and something would come on and nobody would change the channel, and you'd be like, okay, cool, it's cool for me to watch stuff like this.
I was on the other side. I remember. Well, I was a young cat.
Right.
Remember, my mom, she would turn on Law and Order when I heard that. Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
I'm on the bed because I'm scared. But I mean, now like gangster movies and stuff. So
Well, and I was just thinking, like, with the rise of when I, younger, MTV, and like I don't know if you guys, Tila Tequila having her own show, and she was the first bisexual person that I saw on TV. I didn't know what that meant at the time. There wasn't really a huge LGBTQ scene, but I just remember. But those would be late night, right? But that was on somebody who didn't have like limitations on the TV or didn't have. So you're just looking for something to watch, and then it comes on, or it comes on after the wholesome, shows that you were watching. And I do think that that's intentional, right? Like it started creeping up more and more, but it's kind of like when there are ads being placed on children, right? Like ads to buy toys. Well, just even innocently, like there are things put in place. I don't think it's a mistake when sexually implicit things pop up on ads for children's, like right on YouTube, right? Or on things that they're, I think that's
it's definitely not a mistake.
Right. And I think that's kind of like where the other issue comes in, is like, there are people of the world, and that's fine. Like but like there's also people who are trying to protect, their children from certain things.
I will go back to what Brandon was talking about though, because sex sells. Like,
money.
One of the largest traffics on the internet is pornography, right? Mm-hmm. That's one of the biggest things people look up. But when we're talking about like movies and shows and stuff like that, it's a draw. And then if you think about just moving further, like the more that you see that stuff and the more it is normalized, then that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
And we already know that, like, being a Christian, you're supposed to be called out from the world, right? You're supposed to be distinctly different. Mm-hmm. But it just makes it harder to do that when you consume media and stuff that's reaffirming that over and over and over again.
Well, that begs the question of, right, and we've heard our own pastor talk about, it doesn't explicitly address it in the Bible of what Christians should or shouldn't be, because, media wasn't really around like that. If they were making music, and like, lyrics along with it. That probably was like the extent, or drawing things on the wall, right? Like there was art, but nothing was as to where it is today. But it goes back to what you're saying of the discernment, and everybody's going to have different struggles. That's kind of my opinion on it. Shares the same with PK, is God doesn't tell everybody the same thing, but if you know that you have been talking to God and asking him to remove lustful desires from your heart, but you're starting your day watching people bounce from relationship to relationship and like sleeping with people on the first date, and then you go in your car and you're turning on your romance R&B songs, well, you wonder why you haven't been released from those things. Not because God isn't trying to work things in you, but because you're allowing the devil to spin his control a little bit longer. And and of course when you start praying for those things, it's going to become even more, if that makes sense. And if you're not ready, and if you're not spiritually in tune, and that's what I think the issue is. A lot of people, when we're just watching TV, we say it's just TV, but you're not spiritually in tune with what the actual message is, right?
Yeah. If your ears aren't covered, you're going to have an issue with that. And I think you made a good point there too, like with what PK said and everything, that God doesn't tell everybody the same thing. Because God convicted me on watching The Walking Dead. That was my show.
That was what?
I love that show.
He ain't tell me. I'm sorry.
But I also finished too much of it, and I'm having dreams of zombies. And I'm waking up in the middle of the night sweating, and God just basically was like, "Yeah, go ahead, take a break on that." So I think you definitely have to pay attention, because other shows that some people may have an issue with, God is like, are your ears covered? Are you paying attention? Are you looking at this through a biblical lens, spiritual lens? And at that point, you're okay.
Right.
That's it right there. Like, what lens are we looking at the show we're watching through? Like, if you're looking at it through a biblical lens, a lot of stuff will be disgusted.
Yeah.
Like, point blank period. We wouldn't be able to stomach it. But when Isaac's sitting there watching TV and Isaac turns on Paid in Full, And Ace Boogie and Money Making Mitch, they just over there chilling, and I'm just like, hey, like that's my movie. That's one of my favorite movies. It's all good, but then if I look at like dang, we're glorifying drug dealing,
Right.
and and murder and like all these sort of things that are anti what I believe, then like I should really be checking myself. So that might be a little bit of spiritual immaturity in my where I am right now in my walk, but I'm still watching Paid in Full right now.
I think that's the thing is you have to keep like checking in on that though, right? Because there are things like that you may not struggle with, but that means you don't struggle with it right now in that moment. And again, there's when Hollywood, and again, like I mentioned earlier, coming of age is a repeated storyline. That's not the only repeated storyline. There's friends, enemies to lovers, right? There's there's different tropes that happen. But the point is that there's repeated storylines that just kind of creep in. And then one day, all of a sudden, it's the easy thing to pick on, but lust, right? Like one day, maybe you never dealt with that before. Oh, I don't look at, right? Like I'm good. Like I abstain. I don't have any issues. You just see one fine thing and you wonder what changed. Like where did that come in? And it's like by watching these things, we have to acknowledge that the crack is there, right? Whether or not that crack always opens for everybody is a different story, but the door is open. And it's just going to take that one thing to sneak in before you know it.
I think it's being desensitized. That's what it is, right? So for me personally, I used to love listening to rap music growing up as a kid, but I always listened to the clean version, right?
Yeah.
My parents and all that kind of stuff and everything. Then I went to college in Atlanta when the whole trap music, right?
Yeah.
Clean version was available.
You're not hearing
You know what I mean, right? And I can tell just from those several years, even coming back to Texas, it did change my mind mentally, how I thought about things, what I did. That stuff seeps in. It does. And it's subconscious, right? So that's one of the most underrated things I think you can think about, for better or for worse, right? So if you're ingesting negative things, subconsciously you will act on them negatively. But if you're ingesting positive things, the word, you will also act on them subconsciously. And most of the time we're acting and we're executing things in our subconscious, right? Like, side example, today, went to work. I just drove straight home, right? That wasn't thinking. My subconscious was like, oh yeah, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. You're just acting on repeat. That's what was in my mind, right? So what you feed your mind is so important in all types of media, movies, books, media, etc. But I think that's what is so important it's not about necessarily watching one bad movie, listening to one bad song. It's that habitual of doing it and those subliminal messages that may not even be clear to you in the moment that will affect you in the long term.
That makes sense.
And I remember in high school, Wiz Khalifa, right? Wiz was popping.
And everything.
Yeah, I wasn't a stoner, but he had this one song. He says, "I don't love them, I don't chase them, I duck them," and he's talking about girls, right? So I used to always quote that because I was like, man, I ain't chasing none of these girls out here. Like, I'm cool. It's me and my basketball. We gonna get to it. And I got all these goals and stuff that I'm trying to do. But then later on, right, I think about the way I viewed and I treated like women in general. It's like, I don't love them, I don't chase them. But if you think about that like biblically, like that's not in alignment. And so that's something that I was reaffirming to myself. And then when I look back and I'm like, oh man, like I still have some of these habits where like, I'm just like, oh, I'm not chasing after my wife. Like, what are we doing? Like, you're supposed to be pursuing her constantly. Like, and all these sort of things, like this those little small micro nuggets and verses and all this stuff that you're feeding yourself. And then you ended up acting on it, like you said, subconsciously without even actively trying to do it.
So when you were talking, it reminded me of a Bible verse, and it kind of leaps into that. So Matthew 6:22-23 says, "The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness?" And so, you could take that and say, but it's like, what are you feeding? It could be internally of what you are on the inside shining out from your eyes, or vice versa of what you are allowing, your eyes to see and manifest itself inside of you. And before you know it, are you exuding light or are you exuding darkness to others?
That's deep.
Yeah.
You know, I thought about like back to movies a little bit too. I'm seeing a lot of men hate women and women hate men themes in movies, and I think that people are definitely absorbing that unintentionally. You're seeing that. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, you go.
Like everyone likes those Tyler Perry movies and everything like that. But if you're watching those Tyler Perry movies, you know that it seems like these men treat these women terribly, and then the women hate these men back, or they're justified.
Right.
They make them seem justified in their terrible reactions because, you know, the Bible tells us to forgive. God calls us to forgive others. Yeah. And then these constant themes in these movies of like, oh, he did me dirty, you know, I'm gonna go like key his car, like pour sugar in his tank, you know, do crazy things because
Carrie Underwood, right? You know. Well, I was just gonna say it's really interesting that you bring this up, and I hope Isaac's okay. But I was convicted a few podcasts ago because I had realized that 2 recordings I had unintentionally put on Isaac the naggy wife trope, or like, oh yeah, your wife, you know, like, but I didn't realize until like after we had finished. But on the second time, he kind of rolled into like, no, and he handled it with such grace that I kind of like it was like a reflection, like it kind of went back and was like, you just tried to make this man agree with you and say something against his wife, even though that wasn't my intention, but I was playing into that trope of, and so I had to tell him, I was like, hey, and he didn't think that I was doing that, but it was what I was convicted on, kind of what we're talking about, was like, you need to apologize to that man and also tell him, like, continue to uplift your wife. Well, you know, like, you did the right thing, and like, I'm going to be more mindful of that moving forward because I didn't realize, but I'm consuming these things, right? The men and the wife, and like, oh yeah, my wife's just at home and she found out I ate dinner without her. Like, oh boy, like, and that's not inherently a negative thing, right? But when you continue to play into that, then you're causing divide in between what's supposed to be like a sacred. And that's what, you know, people say things aren't that deep, but like, as something as innocent as what I was saying, and I didn't mean it like that, could have easily, right, like made its wedge, or whoever was watching the podcast might have also taken, like, I might have been the media someone was consuming and playing along that trope, which is crazy to think about. And
it's a really good point too, like with intentions, because like you said, you didn't have any bad intentions there, but I think that kind of goes into what we're talking about with like movies and music. I don't think that every person who directs a movie or makes this song is like, oh, let me ruin our kids. You know, I don't think that's always the case. But sometimes your intentions, you know, not to say that doesn't happen, because it definitely happens. I would say
things changed a little bit.
But I will say not everybody's intentions are that, and I think that goes to show that you still have to pay attention, because even if the person who created this song or this movie is not saying like, oh yeah, let's ruin these children, or let's make people have sex more and care less about marriage, it's happening anyway. So you have to, you know, be very mindful about what you're choosing to send out there.
Well, I don't think I will say I am one of the, like, I'm not a, you know, aluminum hat type of person, but there are certain things that I think get articulated out there that are true. I do believe that Hollywood is evil. I do believe that certain people do actually sell their souls. And it's like not oh, you sold your soul because you're giving up all your morals. No, I genuinely believe that people make deals with the devil. And like, I think those people that are that far and have that much control in the media, it is that serious. It is like that. And I think those people who are saying that much stuff, it is like that. Because there are plenty of Christian actors, right? There are actors who aren't Christian who have tried to go and say, I want to be in this industry, but I refuse to film any scenes that are even suggesting that I kiss anybody other than my wife, or that and they don't get hired for roles, right? Like, that's
respectful though on their part.
And it is, but it's like, hey, I'm trying to be me in your world, and this is all I'm asking, and they're not willing to do that. They're like, no, you have to, like, right? Even though, like, a lot of times those scenes aren't even necessary, right? Like what we talked about earlier, but all that to say is, while not every, I do think most, but that's
Oh, yeah.
my opinion.
No, and I agree 100%. That's why I'm like,
Yeah, right.
I will say most because it's definitely intentional in the way that they choose to portray certain things. You know, at a certain point, you have to look inward and be like, okay, I'm definitely influencing the media. You have to understand the like I just said, the influence that you have with your platform, and you have to pay attention to it. And some people don't.
So, have y'all ever experienced like FOMO based off of the stuff that you like consume?
Yeah.
Have you ever been like, man, I'm watching this movie, like, dang, like, oh, he's a player, like that look kind of fun, like, let me go see what that's about. But
Yes.
I was thinking about that because I'm hearing all this, and I think about like what I was consuming, and
It takes you back.
when I got to college, right, that's when on my walk, it was like a time where I was like, oh, let me venture over here a little bit. But then God always sends somebody that'll bring me back to him. But I was strong, but the more and more I was in an environment and surrounding myself that was things that weren't of God, like that's when the FOMO started. Like, man, they always talking about this. Like, they always talking about this party. Like, I said no the first weekend, but the first week of school is when everything's going on. Like,
Right.
did I miss out? Should I have went? You know, like stuff like that. And then eventually, right, I find myself going out and like getting into the streets a little bit, trying to see what that's like. And then God be like, bring me back. And but I said all to say, right, I think that the stuff we consume, again, like the innocent, what we think is innocent, right? Oh, it's not that bad. But we're planting seed all the time. And then we go consume something else, or our friends are watering that seed, whether they know it or not.
It's not a sin, but we just have to be realistic about what could happen, right?
Mhm.
Like that's the reality. Is it doesn't explicitly say not to do things, but I saw they were on a podcast and they're like, should Christians be consuming secular? And secular just means anything that's not created purposely to worship God. So like Christmas music, it could be Bluey the cartoon, like could be innocent things. It doesn't just mean vulgar and like in your face, but. The guy kind of being asked the question kind of flipped it and he goes, I never tell people what they should or shouldn't do. Instead, what I say, he goes, if your favorite artist is, and you want to go see their concert, but they're all about money and drugs and glorifying, right, like violence, would Jesus be going into that concert with you? Now, while the answer is no, right, like, it's probably no. Jesus is not going to be going in there to consume that content, but like you just kind of have to do a heart check of like, what is it about this that I can't let go of? Like, why do I want this? And if your heart isn't grieved after that, I don't want to say that's okay, but that's not your conviction in this moment, but you kind of have to like ask yourself, like, am I doing it because of FOMO? Am I doing it because I want to pretend like I'm still living a life that I'm not? Or am I genuinely just doing it because I like the beat? Or I like, right? Like there are some things where,
Depends,
right.
honestly,
Yeah.
right? So you watch Walking Dead, you got convicted.
I did.
You watch Walking Dead, you didn't get convicted. Does that mean all Christians should not watch Walking Dead?
Yeah, it definitely doesn't mean that.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
it depends. It depends on, I think, on that conviction, on what you're struggling with, right? Some Christians drink, some Christians don't. Is that a struggle for some? Is that not for others? Nothing wrong with that necessarily, right? But it depends upon what exactly is the goal. What is the intent, right? If it's something that's leading you the wrong direction, then that is wrong for you, right?
Yeah.
But if something is not, it's not necessarily saying you cannot do certain things. Some things might not be beneficial, right? Doesn't mean that they're wrong or bad or evil inherently.
Yeah.
There was one thing I was thinking about. I know we're done now, but Terrence Howard did this interview.
Do you want to get it for a clip?
There's still
Okay.
I'll play it real quick. It's like a minute something, but I was just trying to find it. But he's talking about how he gets into bad roles, and he describes acting as a mediumship.
Interview where you said there were parts of your life that were very. You started getting cast as a villain because you felt like in your life you were being portrayed kind of as a bad person.
Well, no, when I think about playing the part of a villain, you really don't understand the good side of you until you've explored the darker side of your nature.
Mm-hmm.
You know, by playing villains, I can see what I would do in certain circumstances, because no actor really is acting, that character has nothing to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Hopkins, there is a Hannibal Lecter inside of Anthony Hopkins,
Whoa.
or he could never explore. There's a Michael Corleone inside of Al Pacino.
Right.
But as a result of that, you get to juxtapose it to who you are or who you want to be. You know, the bad characters I've played reflect some of the bad things that occurred with me, and it's been kind of a cathartic and therapeutic for me to walk through those lifestyles and then to come out on the other side, because as an actor, there's no consequence
Right.
to your action. So you get to explore humanity to the full. And I think maybe we need to do that within the urban community and stop some of this on street violence and explore it in the theater and explore it in the music and explore it in our artistry, and maybe we'll find a better way of expressing ourselves.
Exploring the dark side of yourself through music and film and
But and what sticks with me is how he spun it at the end to be like a good thing, right? Because that's where people they put it right out there. He just told you, right? There's multiple entities or sides of you, which could be true, that live within you, but then you spin it right there at the end to be like, but I think we should take that and we should allow it to live in us, but let's put it to something else. And then you're kind of like, well, that's not what he said. What he said was, right? Like for anybody who tries to go against it.
It was therapeutic. That's right. It's more of a technique for that. When you think about Christians, we ask the Holy Spirit to inhabit us when we go to church. It's the same concept.
Yeah, I think it just gets bold-faced. The example I wanted to bring up was Travis Scott and everything that happened at Astroworld. I was like, I think it's that deep. I think it was a literal like sacrifice happening in front of us, and they spun it as a tragedy. Like it went wrong, but like you saw the set for it, and I was like, how does this not scream demonic?
But
and
that
I
was
think
about money as well.
Was about
How
money.
much can we get? That's what it all goes back to.
Yeah.
The root of all evil.
I think the enemy is disguised as an angel of light for a reason, because like in that video too, like you said, he tried to make it sound good at the end, kind of butter it up, so people listening are like, oh, you know what, he said something crazy in the beginning, but since he cleaned it up,
the urban communities.
He cared.
Right.
But if I'm Terrence Howard, I can't explore the dark side of Isaac. Like I don't want to. PK said something on stage. He was like, I don't want to find myself. Like I would be scared what I find, and I'm trying to make myself like Christ as best I can. But like that's kind of crazy if you really think about. Like I'm gonna explore like all these desires that I have. I'm gonna do it on film and say it's fake so I can live it out. Like that's evil.
Yeah, that Hannibal Lecter comment was insane.
Yeah,
that was insane.
And he's probably right. To some degree. You know what I mean?
For some actors, for sure, they probably are taking that on. But then there's other actors too. You think of, I don't know if y'all have heard the backstory behind The Chosen and the man who played Jesus in that. I believe he ended up having to have like 2 heart surgeries after the filming because the stress of like him being up on the cross. I think he got like pneumonia and a couple other physical ailments from playing Jesus Christ. And there was a lot that went into that whole filming and everything. It was like, oh, my initials are JC. I'm 33 years old. And the director like hung up on him because he was scared because it was so weird. And I just think that it goes to show it depends on what you're playing. But who knows how his life has changed. I know that a bunch of people that were on the set of The Chosen ended up getting saved after, like people who were Muslim, people who were like straight up agnostic or atheists. They ended up looking and being like, that's crazy, like seeing him up on the cross and realizing like, oh, Jesus, what he did for us, that's the physical embodiment of what actually happened, and then they were able to get saved. So I won't say that all movies and all of that is bad for us, but if you put that biblical lens on and like really pay attention, because when I watch movies now, I watched like a little World War II movie last week. I'm sitting there, I'm like, that wouldn't happen if sin wasn't in the world. And that's what I'm like trying to watch the movies from now.
Different ways.
Yes, exactly.
It's good.
I think a good ending question to leave with our viewers, and it's kind of something for people to chew on, is what does your watch history reveal about your spiritual appetite? What are you consuming at this moment that reveals what we say we're chasing after, which is God? All right, and on that note, if you enjoyed today's podcast, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already, and leave a comment and share it on all your social media platforms. We'll see you next time.